If I were to ask you who is the best horror slasher of all time, who would you say? Some may say Freddy Krueger, which is a good choice, I hand you, because he has like 16 movies in a comic book series, and he fought Jason. Speaking of Jason is also a really good pick, with him having like 20 movies, 3 games, a comic book series, a bunch of food, and all that crap, and he's still going to this day, even though he's in like a legal lawsuit battle. And there's a bunch of other valid choices you could say, but for me personally, I would say Michael Myers is probably the best horror slasher ever. And you may be saying, Kane, what crack are you on? But if I'm being honest, that's not too crazy of a thing to say. Michael Myers and Jason have always been compared. And Michael Myers has been doing better than Jason, because the last Jason movie was released like 2001 or some crap, and the last Michael Myers movie was released in like 2023, so I think Michael is still doing pretty good. But the reason I say this is because it's time for me to finally get into that true spooky spirit and review my first Halloween movie, which also just happens to be called Halloween. But it also just happens to be a really good time to talk about this movie, since not only is it Halloween season, but it's also the anniversary of the movie, because it came out in October 25th. But with all that said, let's talk about the plot of this movie first. The beginning of this movie shows us the POV shot of Michael Myers killing his sister. Which is a cool shot, don't get me wrong, it's a really cool thing, but it's just so long. It's like 10 minutes of just watching Michael Myers walk up the staircase. It would have been much better if it was just much quicker, instead of it taking 10 minutes for little baby Michael to like walk up the staircase. But after getting caught murdering his sister, he goes to a nut house for about like 12 years until he's 21. Till eventually he gets the chance to escape, which he does, but they never really tell us how he escaped along with all the other random prisoners that were there. Like, it could have been a power outage or something, but they just never tell us. The prisoners just got out somehow. But he attacks his therapist, who we're gonna call John, and also some random lady we're gonna call Millie? I don't really know. Seriously, just can't remember any movie character's name besides Michael. But pretty much, Michael attacks Millie by jumping on top of the car like an orangutan and pulls her out and just drives away. Which was just a really weird thing to see, because usually Michael's walking at the pace of Stephen Hawking, but seeing Michael jump on top of a car like the Predator is just a really weird thing to see. But after that, they go on like a police hunt chase looking for Michael. And while that's going on, we get introduced to our main character, which is some random lady. Which later is revealed that it's like his sister, I think. Maybe. But for like primarily half the movie, the babysitter and the little kid aren't really the main focus of the movie. It's more of John looking for Michael Myers. Like, there's this one part where John like hides in the bush for like half the movie next to the old Michael Myers house, and he kind of just like scares kids and stuff, while Michael Myers is like peeking on kids having sex and dressing up as ghosts and stuff. It's really weird. He only actually attacks the babysitter at like the very end of the movie, where she kind of just runs around the house, stabs him 2 times, he falls, he does the ore farming sit-up, then he grabs her and gets shot by John, then falling to his death, but leaving us with a cliffhanger because he disappears. And that's pretty much like a crappy summary of what this movie is, because once again, this is like a horror slasher movie, so there's not that much story to go about. But it's now time to actually talk about the story more in like a rating term, because I do have some problems and some things that are good about this story. So let's start it off. So first, for this being a horror movie, there's barely any actual killing until like 59 minutes into the movie. And yes, you could count the first dude, but that's off screen. I'm talking about an on-screen kill doesn't happen until like 58 minutes into the movie. We get a boob scene before we get a actual killing scene in a Halloween movie, which is just really weird. I mean, I ain't complaining, am I right, boys?
Shut your fucking mouth!
No problem, Charlie.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
As I was saying, for this being a horror movie, there's also just so many long, boring shots in this movie. Just like 5 minutes of some dude just walking down the walkway. Like, there's just so many slow talking scenes and unnecessary zoom outs. It's just so annoying to watch. Especially the first 10 minutes of this movie, where there's like a 5-minute scene of it zooming out of Michael Myers after he killed his sister. It's just like this really weirdly slow shot of him just standing there. Or while they were driving to the, hospital, it was like a 5-minute scene of them just yapping to each other. This is just a really slow starting movie. It doesn't really get crazier or, any panicking until, the last 20 minutes where Michael actually starts, killing people. And also, I feel they could have gave us more background info on Michael Myers and maybe gave us more about his childhood or something, because he kind of just randomly kills his sister and they just don't tell us why. And I know John, throughout the whole movie, is yapping about, Michael Myers is evil. There's not a soul inside that child. But come on, bro. That just sounds like a way to not have to write more about the character and make, a really sad or cool character, instead of just saying, oh, he's evil. But with enough of that, let's actually talk about some good things about the story and plot of this movie. I think the character John himself, well, not actually John, just the name I made up for him, the doctor dude. But John is probably one of the best characters in this movie for a bunch of reasons. One, he kind of just, hates kids. He, once again, just stood in a bush and yelled at some kids. And also, he's just not afraid to run up to Michael Myers and shoot at him. He got balls of steel to be doing this. Even mentioning all the wisdom and fire quotes he drops every 10 minutes of the movie. He's just a really good character and I love him, and especially since he comes back every movie. But another good thing about this movie, and something that's probably my favorite thing about this movie ever, is the atmosphere. I know you guys may be saying, Kane, you say every game you play has good atmosphere. I don't care. But I gotta say, this movie has some of the best and coolest atmosphere I've ever seen. Okay, maybe I'm glazing it a little, but the atmosphere is really good. It's always dark and it has that Halloween feeling. It masters it. With every scene having some type of Halloween decoration or a jack-o'-lantern glowing in the background, this scene always has that Halloween feeling just glowing out of it. And it's not even just the Halloween atmosphere, because every single scene Michael Myers is in, it's either dark or creepy or him just lurking in the shadows. There's probably only a few scenes where we actually see Michael Myers in a brightly lighted room or outside area. Other than that, we always just see Michael Myers lurking in the background or hiding in the dark. One of my favorite scenes of this whole movie is when Michael Myers choked out and stabbed that dude to the wall and just stood there and looked at him. And it was just a minute scene of Michael Myers just examining his body, kind of like how an artist looks at his artwork. And it's not even just that scene, but every scene Michael Myers is in, they just perfectly master the way Michael Myers should be, this silent stalker who doesn't talk. They play and portray Michael's character exactly how the doctor describes him, a dark-eyed, mysterious figure who just is evil. There's not one time where Michael hesitates to kill someone. Michael in this movie is like King Von. So, all of that said, it makes this movie perfect how they mix up this wonderful atmosphere, this perfect season, this beautifully crafted killer, and just mix that all into a decent movie. Yeah, you guys thought I was about to glaze this movie. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong. I love this movie, but it aged not too good. A lot of the scenes are really dragged out, it's slow, you can barely hear some of the characters. The acting's terrible with a lot of the babysitters or victims of Michael. But once again, this movie was made in the 70s, and they had a budget of $300,000, I'm pretty sure, so I'm not gonna give it too much hate. It was still a good movie. This is pretty much what I would call a flawed masterpiece. But with all that said, let's actually talk about how this movie was made. Because once again, this is the most popular and revolutionary movie ever made when it comes to horror movies and slashers, so why not talk about how it was made? So to begin, it had a budget of $325,000, which really isn't that much for a movie. But the good thing is, they made a lot of money from a really small movie like this, with it making over $47 million in the box office. And that's just in the US alone. This movie was a banger, and one of the most scariest movies at the time. Nowadays, I can watch it while being in the pitch dark, but back then, people were jumping and ripping their pants off to this movie. It was scary. So I bet the film producers were jumping for joy when they figured out they made one of the most historic movies ever. And even more impressive, they only shot it in 25 days in Pennsylvania, which is also just really cool to see because, well, they did it in such a quick time, and the movie was still pretty good. Also used a bunch of new and unique ways of filming the movie. Like, remember that original really long shot they had with Michael killing his sister? That was a unique thing at the time. And another unique thing they did in the movie wasn't also how it was made, but how they recorded the first scene of the movie. Because you remember that really long, like, 5-minute shot of Michael killing his sister, and we, like, seen it through his eyes? Though it wasn't the first movie to do something like that, it was the first movie to use the camera technology they did to record it, without having someone walk around with the camera. Instead, they used, like, this wheel thing with a rotatable neck to, like, have the camera still and steady. Now, to be granted, take everything I just said with 2 pounds of salt, because I may not know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on some things about that, with it using a unique and, at the time, advanced technology when it comes to filming. But yeah, it's very interesting to see how movies like this were made, because not only are they some of the most interesting movies to learn about, but they're some of the most historically, like, important movies ever. So it's really cool seeing a movie like this with such a big impact on the movie industry, being relatively low and not really too advanced to movies nowadays. Because if something like Halloween came out nowadays, it wouldn't be as popular as it was back in the 70s. It would probably fail, honestly, in the box office. But we can still appreciate how this movie was made, because back in the day, they didn't have, like, multi-million-dollar budgets and CGI. Instead, they had to make practical effects and all that. But with all that said, it was still really cool to talk about this movie and rate it and talk about how it was made, because, as I said like 9 times now, this is one of the most revolutionizing movies for the horror genre. And I'm really excited to talk about more movies like this, like Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Scream. I'm ready to talk about more movies than just this, and maybe I'll even talk about some new movies. And with the new game coming out, it's not a bad thing to say that Halloween probably isn't gonna go nowhere for a long time. Blumhouse is supposedly making a new movie soon, so thanks for watching, I'll see you guys later.